Hi everyone, it's Dave here, and I hope you're having a nice afternoon so far, whatever you're doing. One of my current fascinations is to imagine how historians will judge the age in which we now live, maybe the last couple of decades, particularly the last few years, and even more so this year. And I think one of the trends that that will be discussed in various essays and books, etc., will be a move toward inauthenticity and image. And as part of that, I think one feature that will also be discussed and pondered on will be the concept of grief, or to be more specific, people dealing with other people's grief, or to be even more specific, people dealing with other people's grief that they don't even know. Now, we can possibly trace this back to the death, certainly in the UK, of the death of Princess Diana, who died, I think she died in August 1997. And I'm sure everybody is aware of who she was and what she did, Princess Diana. She was undoubtedly a very popular member of an unpopular royal family. Someone, I think, who was held in high esteem in the public's consciousness. And she was called the Queen of Hearts. And I think that was because she came across as genuine and kind and caring and authentic. Many character traits that you could argue possibly many other individuals within the royal family don't possess. And when she died in sudden and mysterious circumstances, it was a sad day for the UK. However, and America as well, because the royal family is very, very popular, and she was very popular in the United States of America. However, the reaction to her death was highly unusual and perhaps marked a watershed moment in UK culture, Western culture even, because the reaction to her death was hysterical in a way that it seemed quite insincere, a lot of it. Because whilst I think a lot of people maybe felt more than a pang of sadness, and I think a lot of people identify closely with her and genuinely were sad, the overreaction to her death was pretty astonishing, really, and I think set in motion a new kind of like cultural trend in the West relating to the death of people that we don't know. Now, I would argue that the grief in its essence and in its form is something that is private to the individuals involved and the individuals connected to the person who has the misfortune of passing away. However, it seems like societies now don't view grief through that lens anymore, and instead it is viewed through a wider lens that seems to involve anybody who wants to play a part or wants to be involved in that process of grieving. And it always strikes me as fake and insincere, or if not always, the vast majority of the time. Because fast forward 23 years from that, and it is now commonplace for many individuals to be involving themselves in this hand-wringing process of fake tears and insincere platitudes to people who've died because they don't know them. They know nothing about them. They don't know whether they were good people or bad people. They don't know what their values were. They don't know what they stood for. And I find the whole thing very, very mawkish and bizarre. And just to give some examples, I think it's commonplace now when you go to a football match. Granted, football fans haven't been allowed, or any sports fans haven't been allowed in stadia for the last few months. But it was commonplace 50% of games for there to be a minute's silence for somebody who died, who was in some way tenuously connected to the club or the community. And what this does is it takes away for me, it takes away the meaning of what death is and what grief is for the family that's involved. Because I think the moment that a load of people who who aren't associated and who don't even know families of loved ones who've passed away get involved is the moment that it starts to become almost disrespectful. And I'll be honest, when I go to a game and a football match and I take part in the minute silence, I don't really care, because for me, it's just another person who's died out of millions who die every day. I have no responsibility to grieve for that person. That is for that person's family and that person's friends. That is a process that they need to go through, a spiritual and healing process that should be personal to each individual connected with that person. That's not for a load of tens of thousands of other people to get involved with. I really don't understand it. And it is just yet another trait that Western society has developed over the last 15 to 20 years, tied closely to insincerity and inauthenticity. Because there's nothing authentic about observing a minute's silence for someone who's died that the vast majority of people don't even know. Now, there's an argument to be made for minute silences. For example, the 2-minute silence that takes place every year on the 11th of November to signify the end of the Great War, the First World War, which ended on the 11th of November at 11 o'clock, 1918. Because in remembering people who've died in war, it's the magnitude, first of all, of the death that's involved. And it's also a recognition of the freedoms that were granted to the rest of us by the brave sacrifice of those who died. Freedoms, incidentally, that are being abused by our generation now. So in that way, there is a connection between us now and the individuals that have passed away. And I understand that there's a line to be drawn as well, but who draws that line? A line, that says we should observe a minute's silence for this individual or for this event, but not for this individual, not for this event. But let's be honest now, in this age in which we now live, we're having minute silences every 5 minutes for anybody, regardless of who they are and what circumstances that they died in. And like I say, I find it pretty disrespectful. And I don't quite understand why we do it and what that says about us. I don't understand. Similarly, after terror attacks, we'll see the platitudes and the tributes instantly on social media. It's almost as if it's a competition as to who can be the first person to make a tribute. And the tribute usually just is a silly, ill thought through slogan. I mean, we live in a society that is obsessed, runs on slogans almost. Pray for Paris, pray for Nice, pray for Manchester. What does that actually mean? What does that actually mean? Somebody goes on their social media account, does a big heart and says pray for Manchester in the aftermath of what was an atrocious terrorist attack on innocent children attending a concert. That doesn't make you a good guy doing that. It's completely meaningless. It's utter vanity, utter moral vanity. And again, it's disrespectful, if nothing else, because the pretense of caring is something that is very, very it's something that defines our generation, the pretense of caring. It's fine. It's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with acknowledging the fact that people die, sometimes in horrendous circumstances, but that you don't have a personal responsibility as somebody who doesn't know the deceased to grieve for them, or even to show the pretense of grieving for them. And I think we're seeing it again now with the COVID-19 situation, except I think now it's increasingly being used as an opportunity or as a get-out clause for people to avoid a wider discussion. Because what is happening at the moment in the way that society has been re-engineered, the health service was completely reconfigured in order to accommodate COVID patients, many of whom never arrived, is we're starting to see the actual terrible effects playing out now across a number of different areas within society. And there's this, it's almost as if people have committed now to such a degree and embroiled themselves so much in the argument that COVID-19 was going to be the worst possible, horrific, terrible disease that was going to rip through the population. It's almost as if people can't quite move on from it now. And they've anchored themselves to such a degree that they can't see the carnage and the damage that's being caused in other areas of society to other people. For example, the genocide that's happened in care homes right across the world, the cancer patients who are being deprived of treatment or consultations, the children who are being abused, the mental health epidemic that's been unleashed, because all that matters are the COVID deaths, sad as they are. And it comes back to my original point, is that I'm hearing a lot of, as soon as you try to engender a debate and a discussion around the perils of lockdown, was it the right decision, and try to raise awareness of the other ills of society that are as a result of the measures, invariably from many people now I'm hearing, this is disrespectful to the people who have died of COVID. What about the people who have died of COVID? It's COVID, 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 COVID. And it is complete myopia without any recognition whatsoever that other people are dying of other causes. And in fact, the policies that have been implemented are resulting and will continue to result in the death of many people who otherwise would not have died if it wasn't for what's been wrongly implemented. And again, it's under this thin veil of, I think, pretending to care again for people that we don't know. The people who were affected by COVID-19 and who died, and their families, obviously, have my utmost sympathy. But they don't have any more sympathy than for anybody else who died from anything else. And it's certainly not my responsibility, or yours if you're watching this and you don't know anyone, to grieve for them. But it is all of our responsibilities to be able to have a debate about, for example, what I'm talking about now, and certainly to be having a debate and asking questions about, have the decisions that have been made been beneficial to society as a whole or not? If not, why not? That is everybody's responsibility to do. And it is not a case of placing people on a pedestal, either A, preferential treatment in hospitals because they have COVID, or B, preferential treatment in death because they've died of COVID or with COVID. I find it incredible. I really, really find it absolutely incredible and blinkered and disrespectful. So that's what I wanted to talk to today, because societies reach a tipping point, and when societies reach a tipping point, all of the negative traits, or many of the negative traits that have been developing in those societies, will converge, and the event or the situation that results that results in that tipping point where the society will no longer be able to carry on in its present guise will present themselves very, very outwardly and very obviously for those of us who are observing. And this is just one strand. So it's something that I wanted to talk about this. The message is, there's no responsibility to show excess grief or to show any grief at all for people who are dying that we don't know. It is our responsibility to have conversations, detailed and nuanced conversations, and important, essential, absolutely imperative conversations around exactly what is this world that we're living in now. Okay, so that's my message today. Again, you may disagree. You might have found that offensive. It's okay. I just speak my truth. Okay, speak to you all soon. Bye-bye.